All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
जय राधा माधव कुंज विहारी जय राधा माधव कुंज विहारी गोपी जनवल्लभा गिरिवरधारी यशोदनन्दना व्रजजनरञ्जना यशोदानन्दना व्रजजनरञ्जना यशोदानन्दना व्रजजनरञ्जना यमुनातिरावनचारी यमुनातिरावनचारी जय राधा माधव कुंज विहारी गोपी जनवल्लभा गिरिवरधारी यशोदनन्दना व्रजजनरञ्जना यमुनातिरावनचारी जय राधा माधव कुंज विहारी जय राधा माधव कुंज विहारी ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत् नष्टप्रायेषु भद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवतीरुत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी कृष्णाय वासुदेवाय देवकीनन्दनाय च नन्दगोपकुमाराय गोविन्दाय नमो नमः. Hare Krishna. So we have been discussing from the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 12. The chapter is titled as Creation of the Kumaras and Others. So today we'll be discussing verse number 17 and 18. So we will read 17, and because 17 does not have a purport, we will read 18th verse also. So, but we will repeat the 17th verse. Alam prajabhisrishtabir idrishibhis surottama maya sahadhantibir dishaschakshurbirulbanaihi. Alam prajabhisrishtabir idrishibhis surottama maya sahadhantibir dishaschakshurbirulbanaihi. Alam prajabhisrishtabir idrishibhir surottamam mahasahadahantibir dishaschakshurbirulbanaihi. Prajabhisrishtabir surottamam maya sahadahantibir dishaschakshurbirulbanaihi. Matajis. Alam prajabhisrishtabir idrishibhir surottama maya sahadahantibir dishaschakshurbirulbanaihi. Alam, unnecessary. Prajabhihi, by such living entities. Srishtabhihi, generated. Idrishibhihi, of this type. Sura Uttama, O best amongst the demigods. Maya, me. Saha, along with. Dahantibhihi, who are burning. Dishaha, all sides. Chakshurbihi, by the eyes. Ulbanaihi, fiery flames. Translation by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Brahma told Rudra, O best amongst the demigods, there is no need for you to generate living entities of this nature. They have begun to devastate everything on all sides with the fiery flames from their eyes, and they have even attacked me. Text 18. Tapa atishta badram te sarva bhota sukavaham tapasaiva yata purvam srashta vishvam idam bhavan. Translation. My dear son, you had better situate yourself in penance, which is auspicious for all living entities and which will bring all benediction upon you. By penance only shall you be able to create the universe as it was before. Purport. In the creation, maintenance and dissolution of the cosmic manifestation, the three deities, Brahma, Vishnu and Maheshwar or Shiva, are respectively in charge. Rudra was advised not to destroy while the period of creation and maintenance was going on, but to situate himself in penance and wait for the time of dissolution, when his services would be called for. Om Ajnanatirmirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guroho श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातां सहगणा रघुनाथान्वितं तां सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनासहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपादान् सहगणा ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च हे कृष्ण करुणा सिन्धो दीनबन्धो जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिकान्त राधाकान्त नमोऽस्तुते तप्तकाञ्चन गौरङ्गी राधे वृन्दावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपासिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभो नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासदि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा. So in this particular chapter we are discussing about Brahmaji's creation. So Brahmaji has created the Rudras, and the Rudras, even though it was time for creation and maintenance, they were just creating havoc, and Brahmaji asked Lord Shiva to, just calm down and, go and perform some austerities. So that's where we are in this whole creation by Brahmaji. So in this context today, I was thinking maybe we could discuss about Lord Shiva, the Shambhu Tattva, but then I realized that few months back during Advaita Acharya's appearance day, we did discuss that. So we will not discuss that topic today. So we will discuss today on the role of Vairagya in Bhakti, because that's exactly what Brahmaji is asking Lord Shiva to perform some austerities. Okay. So we will discuss on that theme. Actually, Srila Rupa Goswami, after describing the 64 limbs of devotional service in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, he says that actually Jnana and Vairagya are not limbs of Bhakti. Jnana Vairagyayor Bhakti Praveshaya Upayogita Ishat Pratamameveti na Angatvam Uchitam Tayoho. He says that Jnana and Vairagya are suitable just prior to Bhakti. Once Bhakti starts, they should not be considered as limbs of Bhakti. And here, Srila Jiva Goswami in his commentary clarifies, Jnana refers to that knowledge which is suitable for the impersonal liberation, and Vairagya means that renunciation which is useful for Brahmagyan. And also that part of Vairagya which may not necessarily be part of the Brahmagyan, but if it is contrary to Bhakti and not recommended by the Bhakti Shastras, it should also be rejected. So that is the meaning of Ishat in relationship to Vairagya, he says. So now, what is that Vairagya which is not contrary to Bhakti? So Srila Rupa Goswami in one of the 64 limbs, he says, Bhogadityaga Krishnasya Hetave. One has to try to give up that which is unfavorable for Bhakti. So he quotes this verse from the Padma Puran. He says, Harim Uddishya Bhogani Kale Tyaktavatas Vishnu Lokastita Sampad Alolasa Pratikshate. He says that Harim Uddishya Bhogani, with a desire to please Krishna, if one gives up the objects of sense gratification right when they are available, not when it is anyways not there. So, but when the opportunity to enjoy is available, understanding that it is not favorable for my Krishna consciousness, if one gives it up, then such a person gains entrance into the spiritual world. So, Srila Jiva Goswami continues and he says that Jnana and Vairagya are somewhat useful just prior to beginning of bhakti or just during the beginning of bhakti. Okay. Just so that one has just little bit of it just to say no, so that one can accept that which is favorable for Krishna consciousness. But once the process of bhakti begins, then jnana and vairagya become insignificant. And he adds that after beginning of bhakti, if these processes, thinking of these processes will actually distract a person from pursuing bhakti. Okay. So, what is that kind of vairagya which is being spoken here, which is said to be unfavorable? Srila Rupa Goswami describes, he calls it as Falgu Vairagya or useless Vairagya. Prapanchikataya buddhya harisambandhi vastunaha mumukshubhihi parityago vairagyam falgu katyate. So he says, what is this kind of useless Vairagya? So he says, parityagaha. These people reject. What do they reject? Harisambandhi vastunaha. Those objects which have a clear connection with Krishna, they reject that also. So who are these people who are rejecting it? Mumukshubhihi. Those who are aspiring for liberation. With a desire to attain liberation, they reject Harisambandhi vastu, that which has connection with Krishna. Why do they reject? Prapanchikataya buddhya. Because they think that it belongs to this prapancha, it belongs to this material world, and it will hold me or bind me to this material world. So they want to reject it. And he says, he calls this kind of vairagya as Falgu Vairagya or useless Vairagya. So, he says that rejection of objects connected to Krishna is of two types. One is not asking for things which are connected to Krishna. So you come to the temple and you don't ask for, okay, I didn't get the Charanamrit. Where can I get the Charanamrit? When you know that it is available somewhere and you are not asking for it, that is one aspect of this kind of Falgu Vairagya. Not asking for it. And sometimes people may say, Prabhu Charanamrit, and you say no thanks. Okay, rejecting it. Rejecting that which comes of its own accord when it has a connection with Krishna. That is the second type of Falgu Vairagya. Of the two, the second type is very offensive. He quotes a verse from the Hari Bhakti Vilas. He says, Prasada agrahanam Vishnor varjayed Vaishnava sada. A Vaishnava should never reject when the mercy of the Lord comes in the form of prasad. Okay. So now, in talking about this Vairagya in the role of, within the realm of Bhakti, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur in his Bhaktya Loka, writing about the 6 unfavorable things for Bhakti. Atyahara prayasascha prajalpo niyamagraha janasangascha laulyamcha shadbir bhaktir venashyati. Talking about the 6 unfavorable things, he talks about prayas. So prayas means over-endeavoring for that which is not favorable for Bhakti. Vairagya is one of them. Okay. So in general, talking about prayas or useless labor, he says that if prayas is not given up, devotion will never arise. And what is devotion? He says, devotion is defined by the symptoms of unalloyed surrender and subordination. Okay. So that full surrender and subordination is the natural propensity of the soul. So prayas means what? Doing something unnatural. What is natural for the soul? Surrender and subordination to Krishna. So trying to do something which is unnatural to the soul is prayas. Okay. So therefore, that surrender and subordination externally manifests in the form of the limbs of devotional service. Okay. Internal surrender manifests externally as devotional limbs. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, etc. So these limbs do not constitute prayas, because prayas by definition means doing something which is unnatural and therefore unfavorable for progress on the path of bhakti. So engaging in the limbs of bhakti is not unnatural for the soul, but he sympathizes. He says, but in the conditioned state, because the constitutional position of the soul is covered with layers of conditioning, devotional service in itself may seem very unnatural. Devotional service in essence may seem unnatural. So therefore, to perform devotional service may seem like, riding against or swimming against the stream. It may seem like a prayas. But he says that prayas is needed. That prayas is needed because it will remove the conditionings and allow this living entity to act according to his constitutional nature. And he divides prayas broadly into two categories, jnana prayas and karma prayas, like we saw. So jnana prayas, he talks about the impersonal knowledge, that is jnana prayas. He describes it in detail, we will not get into that. And then what is not jnana prayas? He says that knowledge which is given in Srimad Bhagavatam and those scriptures which are in line with Srimad Bhagavatam, that knowledge, learning it is not prayas, it will not come within the category of jnana prayas. In essence, that's what he says. Then he talks about karma prayas. Karma prayas means endeavoring for mundane karma and also the Vedic karma if it is unfavorable for bhakti. Okay. Dharmasvanushtita pumsam vishvaksena katasuyah na utpadayed yadiratim shramayeva hi kevalam. So that is karma prayas. So he says that therefore karma prayas and jnana prayas is very detrimental for devotional service. And he says, but there are certain things which may look like prayas but they are not prayas. He says, going to holy places, he says, is actually unfavorable prayas. Okay, that is unfavorable for devotional service. But he says, if however one goes to place of Krishna's pastimes with a greedy desire to awaken love for Krishna and with a desire to associate with exalted Vaishnavas there, then that type of going to holy places is not prayas. Okay, and then he says, following vows which are authorized by the Bhakti Shastras like Ekadashi Vrata, etc., he says that is very favorable. That is not prayas, that is very favorable for bhakti. And then he says, endeavor to serve the Vaishnavas is not unfavorable prayas. He says, because greed to associate with one's own peers who are Vaishnavas actually destroys the fault in the form of desire to associate with worldly minded people. So therefore that prayas, even though may not be very attractive, but it is not unfavorable prayas. And similarly he talks about deity worship, sankirtan, chanting the holy names, etc. So, and then he says there is no need for prayas for renunciation also, externally. Because renunciation is a natural byproduct of bhakti. It is not a prerequisite for bhakti. Vasudeve Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojitah Janayatyashu Vairagyam Jnanam Chayada Haitukam. When one performs bhakti, automatically jnana and vairagya follows. Okay. So, then Srila Rupa Goswami says, why is it detrimental to cultivate this kind of unfavorable vairagya and jnana? Why? What is the problem? Can't bhakti take some help of some jnana, some vairagya, What is the problem? There is nothing wrong in taking some additional help. Even if it doesn't help, at least, there is no loss. What is the problem in taking some additional help? You are carrying cash with you. Just in case if it's not sufficient for you to purchase something, it is good to have GPay on your phone or something like that, So, there's nothing wrong. You don't lose anything. But Srila Rupa Goswami tells a very important point. What is the problem in cultivating jnana and vairagya along with cultivating bhakti? He says, Yadube chitta katinya hetu prayaha satam mate sukumara swabhaveyam bhaktis tad hetu ririta. He says, this jnana and vairagya prayaha chitta katinya hetu, they generally cause hardening of heart. That is the problem. Okay. Therefore, satam mate, authoritative devotees have concluded that bhakti hi tad hetu ririta. that either for beginning bhakti or for pushing bhakti ahead and ahead, bhakti only acts as the impetus and not jnana and vairagya. Okay. And what is the nature of this bhakti? He says, Sukumara swabhaveyam. The nature of bhakti is Sukumara swabhava. Very, very soft. So therefore, when you introduce, jnana and vairagya, they make the heart hard, which is contrary to the purpose of bhakti, which is to make the heart soft. Okay. Why jnana and vairagya makes the heart hard? He says, Srila Jiva Goswami in his commentary explains, jnana, this kind of impersonalistic jnana, involves deliberating continuously on the truth, and for that you have to defeat the opposing philosophies, engage in debates again and again, and that act actually makes the heart hard. The debate and wanting to win the debate and continuous deliberation on the truths. And vairagya, why does it make the heart hard? Because you have to repeatedly say no, 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 no. Repeated tolerance without a higher purpose actually makes the heart hard. Okay. So, therefore, the very nature of these practices, he says, is very harsh or unpleasant. And therefore, the heart also becomes similarly harsh if they are cultivated. Now, but one may ask, but how can one go to higher and higher stages of bhakti if vairagya is not seen? So, Srila Rupa Goswami says that bhakti hi tad hetu ririta. That bhakti alone acts as the cause of going to higher and higher stages. It is not jnana or vairagya. So that's why Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains that satam kripa mahat seva, then agyata sukriti, shraddha, sadhu sangha, bhajana kriya, like that. So it is the bhakti in the heart of the devotees which generates compassion, and that compassion actually makes the devotee engage the living entities in some service to Krishna, and the favorable impressions that the living entity develops by that kind of service to the Vaishnavas and service to Krishna accumulates as Agyata Sukriti, and it matures into Shraddha, and then that becomes the cause of bhakti. So, never Jnana and Vairagya alone becomes the cause of bhakti. Tasmat mad bhakti yuktasya yogino vai madatmanah na jnanam na cha vairagyam prayah shreyo bhavediha. Krishna tells Uddhava in the 11th canto, O Uddhava, for a person engaged in my bhakti, bhakti alone acts as the cause of progressing more and more, not jnana, not vairagya. Okay, that is very clearly mentioned. And not only that, if without practicing jnana and vairagya, if one practices bhakti, one need not feel insecure thinking that, oh, the goals of jnana and vairagya, I may be bereft of achieving that. So Srila Rupa Goswami says, Kintu jnana viraktadi sadhyam bhaktiyaiva siddhyati. Okay. The goals of jnana and vairagya can be attained by bhakti alone without the need to separately practice jnana and vairagya. Okay. Their goals are generally liberation. So, he quotes this famous verse from the 11th canto, Yat karmabir yat tapasa jnana vairagyatascha yogena dana dharmena shreyobir itarairapi sarvam madbhakti yogena madbhakta labate anjasa swarga apavarga maddama katanchid yadivanchati. Whatever one wants to achieve by the practice of karma, jnana, yoga, vairagya, etc., my devotee just by practicing bhakti can achieve it. Like that. But there is a problem. People may say, if you are forbidding vairagya, there is one thing to tell vairagya is not needed, but you are going one step ahead and telling vairagya is forbidden, cultivation of vairagya is forbidden. Then the person practicing bhakti will be filled with lot of material desires. And if he is filled with material desires, along with performing bhakti, he will engage in performing many sinful activities which are against the principles of the scriptures. So how will he progress? And moreover, the Shastras say, Vishayavishta chittasya Krishnavesha Suduratah Varuni Diggatam Vastu Vrajan Naindrim Kimapnuyat. So, Vishnu Puran quotes this verse. It says that for one who wants to get an object which is in the western direction, he cannot get it by running in the eastern direction. Similarly, for a person whose heart is completely absorbed in material thoughts of enjoyment, how can there be Krishna Avesha, absorption of his heart in Krishna? It is not possible. So therefore they say, therefore along with practice of bhakti, Vairagya should also be cultivated. This is their argument. Srila Rupa Goswami responds. He says, Ruchim udvahatas tatra janasya bhajane harehe vishayeshu garishtopi ragaha prayo viliyate. He says, little ruchi or little taste. Here ruchi refers to Shraddha. Okay. Little inclination for bhakti. Harehe bhajane ruchim udvahataha Vishayeshu garishtopi prayaha viliyate. Ragaha prayo viliyate. Even if little taste for bhakti is there, even if his heart may be filled with lot of material desires, gradually by progress of bhakti only, all those material desires will be destroyed. And Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in his Madhurya Kadambini describes 4 types of material desires or anarthas: Dushkritotta anarthas, Sukritotta anarthas, Bhaktiotta anarthas, and Aparadotta anarthas. So these material desires which are born out of past sinful life, past pious life, and some material desires which are born out of proper practice of bhakti also in the form of puja, labh, pratishta, or some material desires which may come due to committing offenses, aparadotta anarthas. Okay. So he describes how each of these anarthas get gradually destroyed at various stages of bhakti. So he says, by bhajana kriya, these dushkritotta anarthas, sukritotta anarthas, and bhaktiotta anarthas are completely gone when one reaches the stage of nishta. At the stage of nishta, there is no more material desires which are due to past sinful life, past pious life, or material desires in the form of desire for puja, labh, pratishta, etc. Some trace material desires due to past commission of offenses which have not yet been nullified can be there. And that can extend till one reaches the stage of prema. But at the stage of prema, it is completely gone. So he says that these material desires are gone just by the practice of bhakti. And by this practice of bhakti, additionally, the heart does not become hard. So you end up with a soft heart, and from that soft heart, the anarthas are also removed without having to resort to Vairagya. Okay. So, and he quotes this verse as the proof again from the 11th canto, Krishna speaking to Uddhava. Bhadyamanopi madbhakto vishayair ajitendriyaihi prayah pragalbaya bhaktya vishayair nabibhuyate. He says, even if my devotee is ajitendriya, if he has not conquered his senses, okay, vishayair bhadyamanopi, and he may be tortured by material desires within his heart, but prayah pragalbaya bhaktya, by his generally strong practice of bhakti, vishayair na abhibhuyate, he will not be defeated by sense gratification. Now, what is the meaning of prayah pragalbaya bhaktya, generally strong bhakti? It means the sensual urges come in spurts. Okay. And when there is a vacho vegam, manasa krodha vegam, jihva vegam, udaropastha vegam, the vega comes, when it is satisfied, then it subdues. So, when there is a stage of subduing of the Vegas, at that point of time, he comes to senses and he thinks, at least now let me practice my bhakti properly. In that mode, when that little bhakti that he performs in between the attack of two Vegas, that bhakti will protect him. Okay. That is the meaning of prayah pragalbaya bhaktya. Vishayair nabibhuyate. He will not be completely overcome by material desires. So, Though the devotee is, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti in his commentary writes, though the devotee is distressed by sense objects, he is not overcome. A person, so he gives an analogy to explain this, two analogies. A person who is very brave, he may be attacked by weapons, but he will not be defeated because he still possesses bravery, by which he will find out some way to fight and defeat the opposing party. But if he is not endowed with bravery, then even a small attack can overcome him. So that bravery is compared to bhakti. So because the devotee possesses that bhakti, he can overcome it. And another example he gives is, if you take a powerful medicine to overcome fever, okay, it's not that as soon as you put the medicine in your mouth and then immediately you put the thermometer, it will show 98.6. Right? It will take some time for the medicine to act, maybe 2 hours, 3 hours, and then when you put the thermometer, it will. So gradually he says that the material desires will go away. So therefore, Vairagya is not a prerequisite for bhakti, but Vairagya is a symptom of progress in bhakti. Same verse, Vasudeve Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojitaha Janayatyashu Vairagyam Jnanam Chayata Haitukam. So which means, when one progresses on the path of bhakti, that progress is symptomatized by manifestation of Vairagya. So that's why it is mentioned, Mahaprabhur Bhaktagana Vairagya Pradhan. Yaha deki Preet Hoy Gaur Bhagavan. So this comes in the context of Srila Raghunath Das Goswami, when he was, not even begging at the Simhadwar and just picking up some, leftover rice, that has been left over by the cows also, he would wash it and then eat it, add some salt and eat it. So when he saw that, Mahaprabhu was very, very happy, not because he was practicing Vairagya, but that Vairagya was a symptom of his advancement in bhakti. Okay. He was not practicing Vairagya as a sadhana, but that Vairagya was a symptom of his progress in bhakti. Okay. So therefore, while Vairagya is not a limb of bhakti, it is not a prerequisite for bhakti, but progress in bhakti should manifest Vairagya. Bhakti pareshanubhavo viraktir anyatra chesha trika ekakala. So bhakti, progress in bhakti, para isha anubhava, experiencing the higher tastes in bhakti, and virakti, trika ekakala, it has to manifest together. So if one is progressing in bhakti, Vairagya, manifestation of Vairagya is a very reasonable symptom and very visible symptom to find out whether one is progressing or not. Because if one is progressing, parallelly Vairagya should also increase. Okay. But that Vairagya is a prerequisite, is not a prerequisite for bhakti, and it is a result of bhakti. And that kind of Vairagya does not make the heart hard. Okay. So, another verse, which is attributed to Srila Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, quoted in Bhakti in Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Vairagya Vidya Nija Bhakti Yoga Shikshartameka Purusha Puranaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Sharira Dari Kripam Budir Yastamaham Prapadye. So where it says that Krishna who has come in the form of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he is an ocean of mercy, and I offer my respectful obeisances unto him, and he has come here to teach Vairagya Vidya Nija Bhakti Yoga. The knowledge of renunciation and bhakti, oftentimes it is understood that way, that he came to teach Vairagya, but Srila Prabhupada, we will see from some purports of Srila Prabhupada how he explains this particular verse. Did he come to teach Vairagya, or what kind of Vairagya he came to teach? 6th canto, Chitraketu Maharaj's pastime, in the purport, Srila Prabhupada writes, as soon as Chitraketu understood the philosophy of Vairagya Vidya, the knowledge of renunciation, he could understand the process of Bhakti Yoga. In this regard, Srila Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya has said, Vairagya Vidya Nija Bhakti Yoga. Vairagya Vidya and Bhakti Yoga, Prabhupada writes, are parallel lines. One is essential for understanding the other. It is, then Prabhupada quotes, Bhakti Pareshanubhavo Viraktir Anyatracha. And then he ends by telling, advancement in devotional service or Krishna consciousness is characterized by increasing renunciation of material enjoyment. So characterized means symptom. So symptom of advancement is Vairagya. But Vairagya is not a tool to advance. It is a symptom of advancement. So when practiced as a tool, it makes the heart hard. When it manifests as a result of practice of bhakti, it makes the heart soft. Okay. Again, 10th canto purport. Srila Prabhupada writes, the Krishna consciousness movement is a movement of bhakti yoga, Vairagya Vidya Nija Bhakti Yoga. By following the principles of this movement, one becomes dissociated from material mental concoctions and he becomes situated in the original platform of his eternal relationship with Krishna. So he says, by following the principles, one becomes detached. Okay. So Vairagya is the byproduct. And similar quotes are there in teachings of Lord Kapil and many other places. I will not go into that. So, and also very powerful purport and verse in the 11th canto, where the 26 qualities of a Vaishnava are mentioned. 11th canto. Krishna speaks to Uddhava, the 26 qualities, Kripalur, Akrita Doha, and so on. At the end of it, he says, Ajñayevam gunan doshan mayadishtan apiswakan dharman santyajya yassarvan mam bhajet satu sattama. So in that verse, it says that even if a person has not developed those 26 qualities, but if he performs Jnana Karmadi Anavrita Bhakti, Anyabhilashita Shunyam Jnana Karmadi Anavrita Manukolyena Krishna Anushilanam, then such a devotee is the best amongst all the devotees, he says. And in the commentary, the Acharyas say, how could a person who does not possess these qualities be considered the best? He says that one should not worry that the person who performs only bhakti, even though he may not possess these qualities, is the best. One should not worry about that statement because he quotes, Bhakti Pareshanubhavo Viraktiranyatracha. Because by progress in bhakti, automatically virakti will also develop. Para Isha Anubhava will also develop. Yasyasti Bhaktir Bhagavatya Kinchana Sarvair Gunays Tatra Samasate Sura. All good qualities develop. Okay. But even without reaching the perfect stage, which means even without achieving all the good qualities, a devotee, even at the stage of sadhana, should be considered the best. Okay. Like that it is mentioned. And also if you see in Bhagavad Gita, the 20 qualities of knowledge, Amanitvam, Madambitvam, Ahimsa, Kshantirarjavam, in those 20 qualities, one of the qualities that is mentioned is Maicha Ananya Yogena Bhaktir Avyabhicharini. Okay. So, performing undeviating devotion to Krishna. And in the purport, both Srila Prabhupada and Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti write that of these 20 items, devotees with great enthusiasm engage in that one element. Maicha Ananya Yogena Bhaktir Avyabhicharini. Unalloyed devotion to Krishna. And then all the other items automatically manifest. All the other. So they do not devote individual effort to cultivate the other 19. Like that he says. So now what is the nature of that Vairagya which is generated by practice of bhakti? Srila Rupa Goswami calls it as Yukta Vairagya, appropriate Vairagya. And what is the symptom of that appropriate Vairagya? He says, Anasaktasya Vishayan Yatarham Upayunjataha Nirbandha Krishna Sambandhe Yuktam Vairagyam Uchate. So what are the symptoms of this Yukta Vairagya? He says, Anasaktasya Vishayan. One should not have attachment to that particular thing that he is employing in bhakti. He should not be attached. That is first qualification. Yata arham upayunjataha. And he should only use those items which can be suitably used in bhakti. And nirbandha Krishna sambandhe. There should be persistent use of that object in Krishna's service, not for one's own sense gratification. He says, this is Yukta Vairagya. Now you may say, oh, this seems the first condition itself is very lofty. It sounds very lofty. Anasaktasya Vishayan, that I should not have attachment to that particular object or that particular service, etc. So, does bhakti start with Yukta Vairagya? Or are there any lower stages which can also be called as, sadhana bhakti? Does sadhana bhakti start at the level of Yukta Vairagya, or are there levels below that? Okay, this question arises. Okay. And before we move to that point, Srila, in his Jaiva Dharma, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur describes how to understand Yukta Vairagya with three very prominent questions, he says. First thing he says, do you want it or does Krishna want it? Okay, that is the first question. Do you want or does Krishna want? Second is, are you attached to it? And the third question is, are you feeling spiritually nourished after utilizing it in Krishna's service? So, when you answer these three questions, you understand whether it is Yukta Vairagya or not. Okay. But this Yukta Vairagya seems little lofty. So, does sadhana bhakti start at Yukta Vairagya, or are there stages below it? Actually. So, if you see, actually there are 4 stages. Of course, you could subdivide it into more also. There is the succumbing stage, where when the devotee comes into bhakti, he has a lot of material desires. His practice of bhakti has not sufficiently purified his heart. So, his engagement in bhakti is called as anishtita bhajana kriya. Very unsteady devotional service. Why? Unsteady because of the material desires. In Madhurya Kadamini, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti says that there are 6 stages of unsteady devotional service only. Okay. Utsahamayi, Ghanatarala, Vyuda Vikalpa, Vishaya Sangara, Niyamakshama and Tarangarangini. 6 stages he says. Okay. Utsahamayi is where false confidence. You come to bhakti and you think you have conquered everything. Okay. Today I could chant 16, tomorrow 32, day after tomorrow 64, and then 192 very soon. By the end of the week I will be chanting. One feels like that. But then few days down the line, Ghana Tarala, 16 becomes 0. He says, anyway, 16 is the qualification for initiation. I am not initiated anyway. Today 0 is okay. Yesterday 16. I have covered up. He feels. Ghana Tarala, thick and thin practice. And then comes Vyuda Vikalpa. I want to practice steady bhakti, but what is stopping me from practicing the steady bhakti? So he says, oh, maybe I am in the wrong ashram. Maybe my office is too far and my commuting is taking too much time. Like that he starts, thinking, attributing external reasons for his lack of steadiness in bhakti. Then he reaches the stage of Vishaya Sangara, where he realizes that there is no external cause. Actually, it is my uncontrolled mind and senses which is the cause of this unsteady bhakti. Like that. So these are the stages of anishtita bhajana kriya, unsteady devotional service, where Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti says that understanding that material enjoyment is forcibly carrying him away and impairing his steadiness in serving Krishna, the devotee resolves to renounce all his addictions and take shelter of Krishna's holy name. I will give up all my addictions and take shelter of Krishna's holy name. But many times he says, his attempts at renunciation end up in enjoying the very same object which he is trying to renounce. So Bhagavatam, Krishna describes this kind of a devotee in Srimad Bhagavatam. He says, Jata Shraddho Matkatasu Nirvinna Sarva Karmasu Veda Dukkatmakam Kaman Parityage Api Anishwaraha Tato Bhajeta Mam Prita Shraddalur Drida Nischaya Jushamanascha Tan Kaman Dukko Darkamscha Garhayan. So what are the symptoms of such a devotee? He says, Jata Shraddho Matkatasu. He has faith in bhakti. Nirvinna Sarva Karmasu. He is not attached to any other practices. Krishna Bhakti Kaile Sarva Karma Krita Hoy. Only by practice of Bhakti, I can achieve everything. I don't have to do anything else. He has that faith. Veda Dukkatmakam Kaman. He knows that. Engagement in sense gratification will eventually lead to problems for me. He knows that. But Parityage api anishwaraha. He is not always able to say no to sense gratification. Time and again he succumbs. And when he succumbs, what he does? Jushamanascha tan kaman dukko darkamscha garhayan. He repents sincerely. I should not have done it. Krishna, please help me. Like that, there is regret when he is unable to live up to the standards. So this is described in Bhagavad Gita also. Apichet suduracharo bhajate ma mananya bhak. So that initial stage where the devotee is carrying a heavy baggage of material vasanas and is still trying to gain a footing in bhakti, that is characterized by this kind of succumbing time and again. Now from succumbing you cannot directly go to Yukta Vairagya, Anasaktasya Vishayan. Now how does that transition happen? So there has to be something between Yukta Vairagya and the succumbing stage. That is the stage of dovetailing. Dovetailing is not Yukta Vairagya, or Yukta Vairagya is not dovetailing. Yukta Vairagya is the stage of Vairagya. Dovetailing is where the person has attachments, accepts it, and says, is there a Krishna conscious way of feeling happy? So Krishna says that, yeah, identify out of 64 limbs, identify a limb which you like. Srila Rupa Goswami also says, why is it that some people get attracted to Kirtan, some people to Shravan, etc.? He says, Svavasana Anusarena. In the beginning, it is according to their material vasanas only. Some people who are very good singers, very likely that naturally they may get attracted to Kirtan. So some others who may be very artistically inclined, they may get an opportunity to express it in deity worship and other such services. This is Svavasana Anusarena. And that kind, when you find out that thing which can absorb us, then it will protect us from getting absorbed in the lower kind of attachments. So engagement in sense gratification is due to boredom. When the mind is not absorbed, when the mind is not liking what it's doing, then it looks for something which it likes. And if there is nothing which it likes within what is allowed, then it looks for that in what is not allowed. Okay. So therefore, one has to identify those activities in Krishna consciousness which one likes and engage in that, at least till he bridges the gap between the succumbing stage and the Yukta Vairagya stage. Because Srila Rupa Goswami says, Syat Krishna Nama Charitadi Sitapya Vidya Pittopatapta Rasanasya na Rochikanu Kintu Adarad Anudinam Kalusaiva Jushta Swadvi Kramad Bhavati. Only Kramad, he says that Krishna's Nama Rupa Guna Leela are actually very sweet. But when the senses are covered by the ignorance, those senses cannot actually taste the sweetness of that Krishna Nama Rupa Guna Leela. But he says, but what should you do? Adarad Anudinam Kalusaiva Jushta. With regularity and respect, engage in that same Swadvi Kramad Bhavati. Gradually it will become tasty, he says. But in that gradual stage, till it becomes Swadvi, what will happen? The Jiva needs that Swad somewhere else. So for that, Svavasana Anusarena, find out something which you like within the realm of Bhakti. And this principle is described beautifully in Brihad Bhagavatamrita, where there is a discussion between what is the best limb of Bhakti. Is it Shravanam? Is it Smaranam? Is it Kirtanam? So the verdict that the Shastras present is that Preetir yato yasya sukam chayena samyak bhavet tad rasikasya tasya tat sadhanam sreshtatamam susevyam Sadbir matam pratyuta sadhya rupam. He says, yes, it is true that Harinam Sankirtan is the topmost, but the topmost limb is that which can give one absorption. He says, whatever the devotional method by which a man with true spiritual taste feels satisfaction and complete joy, that is the method that the saintly authorities deem most excellent and effective for him. So there has to be some absorption. That absorption immediately may not be the desire to please Krishna. That is there in the background. But predominantly there may be some swad, because one has lived a life since time immemorial, a life of sense gratification. So suddenly the transition will be little difficult, even though theoretical conviction is there that I have to do it for Krishna's pleasure. But for all practical purposes, the senses are craving for some pleasure. So when one identifies those limbs which are likable, one need not feel guilty in engaging in that. It is favorable. Okay. So he says, so therefore, actually purification comes from absorption. Sometimes we hear some philosophical concepts like, if you do what you like, it is karma yoga, it is not bhakti yoga. Okay. So it is neither karma yoga nor bhakti yoga actually. Okay. See, because karma yoga is not doing what you like. Karma yoga is that which is prescribed in the Dharma Shastras. And bhakti yoga is that which is prescribed in the Bhakti Shastras. So in Bhakti Shastras, it talks about that which Krishna likes. But amongst what Krishna likes, it is not a sin to like some of the limbs yourself. And just because you do it, because you like it, it does not become karma yoga like that. Because one is firmly trying to gain a footing where some absorption can be there so that one can give up the lower kind of attachments. So sometimes this kind of thing. So if I do what I like, if it is karma yoga, then one does not want to do it as a sadhana. But my mind is craving to do something which I like, and I don't want to do karma yoga. So what will I do? Sense gratification. Because anyway, sense gratification I am not doing as a sadhana. That kind of a mentality devotees develop. Or sometimes another point that we often hear is, if you do what you don't like, you will progress very fast. That is another concept. But actually, Brihad Bhagavatamrita says the exact opposite thing. If you do what you like, you will progress very fast, because when you engage in an activity which you like, it will give absorption. And it is the absorption that is the cause of progress. Okay. So now, that principle that if you do that which you don't like, you will progress very fast, is at best an incomplete principle. If you want to complete that principle, it is, if you engage in an activity which you may not like, but you do it because you want to please a devotee who is very exalted, then by the power of absorption of that love towards that devotee, that absorption will purify. But some absorption is needed. Either absorption in the limb of bhakti or absorption in the personality whom you are trying to please by engaging in that limb of bhakti. But if neither absorption is not there, merely engaging in an activity which you don't like will not lead to advancement actually. Because where is that absorption going to come from? And on top of that, sometimes, you are doing what you like, so that is, you will not progress. So there is guilt also. And on top of that, there are unfavorable emotions also that might push. So therefore, it is very important that to move from the succumbing stage to the stage of Yukta Vairagya, where one actually develops some Vairagya inside, Anasaktasya Vishayan. There has to be a stage where there is a facilitation of dovetailing, where at least for some part of the day or week, a person feels that pacification of his mind by engaging in something which he likes, but which is not against the tenets of bhakti, which is favorable for bhakti. Okay, that is the stage of dovetailing. Then from dovetailing comes Yukta Vairagya. And then when one diligently practices Yukta Vairagya, Anasaktasya Vishayan Yatarham Upayanjatah, then he reaches the stage of, the fourth stage of bhakti, which is spontaneous devotional service. Tvayi me ananya vishaya matir matupate asakrit ratim udvahata dadda gange vogam mudanvati. Like Kunti Maharani says, the mind, like river Ganga, naturally flows towards the ocean. Similarly, one's mind flows naturally towards the lotus feet of Krishna. So that is a gradual. So this kind of a, so the progress is actually gradual, and the Shastras always give provision for gradual progress. And you cannot skip the stages. Okay, for example, in Bhagavad Gita, if you see, Krishna in the 12th chapter says, Mayyeva mana adatsva, Mayi buddhim niveshaya, nivashishyasi mayyeva ata urdhvam na samshayaha. Your mind should spontaneously get attracted to me. He says, not possible. He says, no problem. Mayi buddhim niveshaya. Whenever the mind goes here and there, remember the Shastric statements, remember the verses glorifying Krishna's beauty or his qualities, aho bakiyam stanakala kutam, bring it back to the lotus feet. Mayi buddhim niveshaya. He says, that is also not possible, very difficult, because the mind is always sitting outside. It's not sometimes going outside. He says, no problem. Atachittam samadatum nashaknosi mayistiram. Abhyasa yogena tato mamichaptum dhananjaya. If your mind is not spontaneously going, practice yato yato nischalati manas chanchalam astiram. If it goes, bring it back. If it goes, bring it back. If it goes, bring it back. Practice abhyasa yoga. Someone says, very difficult. Very difficult. Thak jaunga. I'll become very tired. Mind is not at all coming back. He says, no problem. Abhyase api asamartosi mat karma paramo bhava. Madartam api karmani kurvan siddhim avapsyasi. If you are unable to deal with your mind always, easier it is to deal with your senses. At least engage your senses in Krishna conscious activities. Forget about the mind. Engage the senses. If someone says, I am not even convinced that the senses should be engaged only in Krishna conscious activities. He says, no problem. At least engage it in varnashrama duties. Atetadapi ashaktosi kartum madhyogam ashritaha sarva karma phalatyagam tatah kuru yatatmavan. If you cannot do it, if you are not completely convinced that you should be engaged in your senses should be engaged in Krishna conscious activities, no problem. At least engage them in the dharmic activities. That way you will at least be somewhat stable. So that way the gradual development and provisions are always given in the Shastras. So many places in Bhagavad Gita you can see. So the principle is Sve sve adhikare yanishta saguna parikirtitah viparyayastu doshasyad. Understand what one's adhikar is, even within bhakti. Is it at the succumbing stage? Is it at the dovetailing stage? Is it yukta vairagya? Is it spontaneous devotion? And engage accordingly, do the needful. So in such a way that one can avoid niyamagraha. So I'll end this with some beautiful insights. Just 2 minutes I will take about this yukta vairagya that Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur gives in his Chaitanya Shikshamrita. He talks about Falgu Vairagya and Yukta Vairagya. He says, he quotes from Chaitanya Charitamrita because it's Chaitanya Shikshamrita. So he takes verses from Chaitanya Charitamrita and gives lessons. So he says, after teaching Sanatan all of this, the Lord taught him about the rejection of dry renunciation, Falgu Vairagya, and accepting Yukta Vairagya, that which is favorable for attaining Prema. He quotes from Madhya Leela, 23rd chapter. Yukta Vairagya Sthiti Saba Shikaila, Shushka Vairagya Gyana Saba Nishedila. So he taught him about Yukta Vairagya and taught him how to reject Shushka Vairagya, dry renunciation. And Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur writes, what is this dry renunciation? He says, these people, by reasoning and interpretation of ambiguous Vedic statements, which means the Upanishadic statements, they conclude that Aham Brahmasmi. Okay. And they said, okay, but now I am conditioned, I want to get rid of this material world, so I want to give up this body, house, food, etc. Okay. Thinking in this way, he says that they smear ashes all over their body and follow dry renunciation. Okay. Not considering what value such actions will do to them, they indulge in dry speculation, indifferent to the fact that real deliverance is caused by a relationship with the Lord that they don't understand. So they become, of course, they may become free from sin and piety, and at the most they may attain Brahman. That's all. All they get is Brahman. But alternatively, here he talks about Yukta Vairagya. He says, if they place the Lord in the center of their life, while caring for body and house, while eating and sleeping, then they gradually increase their devotion to the Lord through their devotional practice. Finally and definitely prema will be achieved. So, if they place the Lord in the center of their life and they may accept whatever comes, then and practice bhakti that way, gradually prema they will get. So he says, this type of renunciation is called Yukta Vairagya. Mahaprabhu forbade Sanatan from practicing Shushka Vairagya or dry renunciation and taught him Yukta Vairagya. Further, he quotes from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teachings to Raghunath Das Goswami. He says, Stirahaya gare yavo nahao vatul, krame krame paya loka bhavasindukul. Okay. He said, be patient and return home. Don't be a crazy fellow. That's how Srila Prabhupada translates. Nahavo vatul. By and by you will be able to cross the ocean of material existence. Okay. Don't try to artificially renounce. Of course, Raghunath Das Goswami was a very exalted person. Markata Vairagya nakara loka dekhaiya. Yatayogya vishaya bunja anasaktahaya. This is the principle. He says, Markata Vairagya nakara. Don't show this kind of monkey renunciation. Oh, today I will become very renounced and don't eat this, don't eat that, and then next day, indulging in the same thing. To show off to people, don't do that. Yata yogya vishaya bunja. Okay. Enjoy the material world in a befitting way. Anasaktahaya, without being attached to it. And what is that heart of Yukta Vairagya? He says, Antare nishtakara bahya loka vyavahar. Achirata Krishna tomai karibe uddar. He says, within your heart you should keep yourself very faithful. Antare nishtakara. Bahya loka vyavahar. Externally behave like an ordinary man. Achirata Krishna tomai karibe uddar. And very soon Krishna will be pleased and he will deliver you. So, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur writes, if a person can carry on his household duties without attachment and worship the Lord with inner steadiness, gradually the material world will fall away. Gradually. By devotion, the soul becomes stronger and establishes a relationship with the Lord. But the alternative is to reject the gradual process, okay, and become a false renunciate. And this leads to degradation of the soul. So he says, to accept necessary objects means to not accept the objects for sense gratification, but for the pleasure of Krishna. The body, house, and objects meant for worship can all be used in Yukta Vairagya. All that is necessary is internal steadiness of the devotee in order to achieve success. An external show of steadiness is only for others to see. But if the internal steadiness is there, very quickly bondage of the material world will disappear. And pure knowledge and pure detachment will certainly increase as the devotion increases. Vasudeve Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojitaha Janayatyashu Vairagyam Jnanam Chayad Ahaitukam. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Hare Krishna.